The lights in medbay 7 blinked softly. Casting a cold blue glow across the silver floor, Nurse Valari stood near the healing pod, her long fingers adjusting settings on the scanner. She had worked many shifts before, treated many species. But never once had she cared for a human. Suddenly, the doors hissed open with a rush of steam, and 2 armored guards carried in a limp body. It was heavy, bleeding, and covered in torn black armor. Valari rushed to them, her dark green eyes wide. "Who is this?" she asked quickly, reaching for her scan tablet. "Human male. Rescued from the edge of Sector 19 battlefield," one guard said, panting. "He's the only one who survived the ambush." Velar nodded and guided them to the healing pod. She touched the controls, and the pod opened with a gentle hum. They placed the human inside, and she began cutting away his armor with care. Steam rose from his wounds, strange red liquid dripping onto her gloves. It was the first time she had seen real human blood, and it looked so alive. Her heart beat faster, but she stayed calm, working with focus. Then something unexpected happened. As she removed the last piece of armor from his lower half, she froze. There was a strange swelling between his legs. Velar blinked, leaned in, and scanned it with her medical lens. The reading came back with an error: unknown tissue activity. She gasped softly and looked at the guards, but they had already walked out. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took another scan. Could it be an infection or a ruptured organ? She had studied dozens of species, but this was not normal for any of them. She pressed the emergency button on her panel, calling Dr. Selvin to medbay 7, possible internal organ inflammation in human male. Her voice echoed through the system. Just then, the human groaned. Valari stepped back quickly, startled. His lips moved slowly, barely making a sound. "Cold," he whispered. She leaned in, confused. "Cold?" she asked softly. He didn't respond, just shivered slightly. The swelling hadn't gone down, it seemed to grow larger. Her heart raced, the doors opened again, and Dr. Selvin walked in. A tall and wise older alien with deep blue skin and calm eyes. He looked at the scene and tilted his head. "What's the emergency?" he asked. Valari pointed, her voice low and unsure. "Doctor, there is swelling between his legs. I think it could be something serious." Dr. Selvin walked over, looked at the human, and then he started laughing. Not loudly, but with a soft chuckle that shook his shoulders. "Ah," he said with a smile. "You found the human male's reproductive organ." Valari blinked fast. "What?" "That's not a medical emergency, Nurse Valari," he said kindly. "That's completely normal. Especially when human males are unconscious and cold sometimes. This happens naturally." Valari's face turned a deeper shade of green. I called an emergency team for that," she whispered in horror. Dr. Selvin just smiled and patted her shoulder. "You did the right thing. Nurse, you were careful. That's what a good healer does." Then he left, shaking his head in amusement. Valari sat down next to the pod, feeling like the floor had disappeared under her feet. She stared at the human's peaceful face. He had short dark hair, a little stubble on his chin. And even now, he looked calm, but she couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Her mind was racing. She had no idea human anatomy was so confusing. Why would their body react that way, even when injured? Was it really just biology, or something more? She looked at the medical monitor again. The swelling was still there. She shook her head and laughed to herself softly. "Strange creature," she murmured. "Very, very strange, but deep inside something else was happening too, for the first time in her life." Valari was curious, not just as a nurse, but as a person. A question had entered her mind, and it wouldn't leave. What else did she not know about humans? And why did this one make her heart beat just a little faster? She didn't have the answer yet, but she knew one thing for sure. This human, whoever he was, had just turned her ordinary medbay shift into something unforgettable. And that was only the beginning. Asterisk, the next morning. Medbay 7 was quiet except for the soft hum of the machines. Valerie stood near the human's pod, arms folded, her face still warm with embarrassment from last night. Every time she thought about the false emergency she had triggered, her neck frills twitched. She had reviewed the data again and again. The swelling had truly confused her. Now, with the human still unconscious, she tried to focus on his recovery. His burns were healing, and his vital signs were steady. But her mind wouldn't stay still. She had questions, and no alien medical file could answer them. So, during her break, she quietly accessed the human anatomy database. It was hidden deep in the files, probably because few aliens ever had to treat humans directly. She sat in the corner of the medroom, her tablet glowing softly in her hands with one tap. The image of a human male body appeared fully unclothed. Her eyes widened, and her cheeks turned darker green. The organ she had seen last night was there, labeled with words like penis, erection, and arousal. She tapped the term erection. The explanation made her blink fast, apparently. This swelling happened not because of illness, but because of temperature, unconscious stimulus, or even certain emotions. Her jaw dropped slightly. That's it. It just ... reacts by itself. Valerie read more, and the words grew more detailed. There were descriptions of mating, of human reproduction, and even drawings of two bodies connecting. She felt heat rise to her face and quickly shut the tablet. Her mind was full of things she'd never imagined. Suddenly, a soft voice behind her spoke. "What are you reading, Doc 5?" She jumped, nearly dropping the tablet. It was the human, awake and smiling weakly from the healing pod. His brown eyes looked tired, but alive. And yes, he had just called her Doc V. She stood up quickly and walked over, trying to stay calm. "You are awake," she said. "I must alert the doctor." He raised a hand slowly. "Wait, please. I don't like too many people crowding me," he said. "Just you is fine." Valerie hesitated, then nodded slowly. "What is your name?" She asked. "Marcus," he said. "Private Marcus Hale, Terran Infantry." She repeated the name slowly, trying to match the human sounds. "I am Valerie, medical nurse of Medbay 7. Marcus smiled. "Nice to meet you, Nurse Valerie." "Though I wish it wasn't while I was half dead." She didn't laugh. Not yet. Instead, she looked at his chart and started checking the vitals. But he noticed how she avoided eye contact. "Did something happen while I was out?" he asked, tilting his head. Valerie paused, then glanced at him. "There was a swelling," she said carefully. Marcus raised an eyebrow, then chuckled. "Oh, you mean down there?" She nodded, still looking serious. "I believed it was internal injury," she explained. "I called the doctor. It was not an emergency." Marcus laughed again, this time louder. Valerie frowned, confused. "You are laughing?" "Doc V, I've never heard anyone describe that like a threat," he said, still smiling. "I should have warned you. It happens sometimes, even when we're out cold." Valerie looked away, a strange flutter in her chest. "I studied your biology last night," she said. "It is more complicated than I expected." "Well," Marcus said with a smirk, "it can get pretty intense depending on the situation." He watched her eyes narrow slightly. "I was talking scientifically," she added quickly. Marcus chuckled again, then leaned back with a groan. "Yeah, well, you aliens make pretty good nurses," he said softly. "You patched me up good." Valerie found herself strangely pleased by his words. It felt nice. "Do you need anything now?" she asked. "A drink," he said. "And maybe someone to talk to. Feels weird waking up here alone." She brought him water and sat nearby. He told her about the ambush on his squad, how they were caught. In plasma fire, how he barely made it out. She listened carefully, asking soft questions, learning more about how humans think, feel, survive. He even laughed when she offered him a nutrient cube made for aquatic species. "Does it taste like fish?" he asked. "No," she said. "It tastes like sadness." They both laughed that time, when he grew tired. She helped him lie back. His eyes were closing when he whispered, "You're different from the others here, Doc V. You actually care." She didn't know how to respond, so she just sat there beside him, watching him sleep again. Valari thought of the swelling, of the strange reaction that caused so much confusion. But she also thought of his smile, the way he looked at her, not like a creature, but like someone real. Something was changing inside her. Quietly, slowly, not infection, not injury, just curiosity, and maybe something else. Marcus was awake again, sitting upright in the med pod with bandages wrapped across his chest and shoulder. He looked stronger now, his voice clearer, his smile more confident. Valari stood near him, adjusting the monitors, trying to focus on her duties, but her hands were shaky, her thoughts cloudy. Every time she glanced at him, she remembered what she had seen on his body, the strange human swelling. Even now, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She had read more articles about it, watched more files, and even asked the AI assistant quietly during her break. But no answer helped her understand why she was so distracted. "I saw you staring again," Marcus said suddenly, his tone playful. Valari blinked. "Caught off guard, I was checking your vitals," she replied quickly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Sure, just doing your job, right?" Valari turned her back to hide her flustered expression. "I am a trained nurse," she muttered. Marcus chuckled. "Look, if you're still worried about the whole swelling thing, I can explain it," he said. "You don't need to," she replied, still facing the monitor. "I already studied it. I know what it is now." "Oh, really?" Marcus said with a grin. "Then maybe you can tell me, why does it happen even when I'm unconscious?" Valari paused, fingers tightening on the screen panel. She didn't answer, because truthfully, she still didn't understand everything, not the biology, and certainly not the strange flutter inside her every time he spoke. Marcus leaned forward slightly, wincing from the soreness in his body. "I've seen a lot of nurses in war zones," he said, voice gentler now. "But you actually care. You treat me like a person, not a patient." Valari finally turned around. "You are a person," she said softly, "even if you're a strange, confusing one." He laughed again, that warm, easy laugh that always caught her off guard. "Confusing, huh? I'll take that as a compliment." Valari walked toward him slowly, holding a clean wrap for his arm. "I need to change your bandage," she said. "All right, Doc V," he replied, lifting his arm carefully. She leaned in, unwrapping the old cloth gently. Their faces were closer now, and she could feel his breath, warm and slow. "Tell me something," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "Do your people ever feel attracted to other species?" Valari paused, her fingers freezing midair. She looked into his eyes, searching for meaning. "That is not common," she answered honestly. "But it is not impossible." "Good to know," he whispered, his eyes locked on hers. She looked down quickly, focusing on the wound. "It is healing well," she said, trying to steer the conversation back to something safe. Marcus smirked. "Is this the part where you tell me not to move too much?" "No," she replied. "This is the part where I tell you not to touch that area again unless you mean it." He laughed so hard he nearly fell off the pod. Valari blinked, realizing what she just said. Her voice had come out too serious. "Too direct, I mean medically," she added quickly. "Of course," Marcus said, wiping a tear from his eye. "Totally professional advice." But there was something else now, a warmth between them, like the beginning of something new, something unspoken that afternoon. Valerie found herself staying longer than her shift required. She brought Marcus a tray of human-friendly food, mostly rehydrated protein and soft fruit gels. He thanked her with a smile that reached his tired eyes. "Doc V?" he said quietly. "Yes, if I asked you to stay and talk, even when you're off duty. Would that be against your rules?" Valerie hesitated. Technically, yes, it was against medical protocol. But instead of saying no, she pulled a stool and sat beside him. He began telling her stories from Earth, about rain, about dogs, about pizza. Valerie listened with wide eyes. She had never imagined a planet so loud, so full of life and flavors and storms. In return, she shared stories of her home moon, where trees glowed at night and silence was a sacred thing. "I'd like to see it someday," Marcus said. "Maybe after the war." Valerie looked at him for a long moment. "I don't know if that will ever happen," she whispered. He gave her a soft smile. "Then let's make sure we both live long enough to find out for the first time in her life." Valerie felt something unfamiliar. Not curiosity, not responsibility, but something warmer, deeper, a connection. And even though she didn't have a name for it yet, she knew one thing. She didn't want this strange, swollen, ridiculous human to leave her medbay anytime soon. Asterisk, the lights in medbay 7 had dimmed slightly, signaling the end of the day's cycle. Most nurses had gone home, and only the Autobots cleaned the corners quietly. But Valerie was still there, sitting near Marcus's bed with her datapad resting in her lap. She wasn't charting his vitals anymore. She wasn't checking his oxygen levels either. She was just there, talking to him, listening, watching his face as he told her more. "Stories from Earth, so you eat cold milk with dry circles called cereal?" she asked with a tilt of her head. Marcus grinned. "Yep, it's delicious, fast, and requires zero cooking skills." Valerie stared at him in disbelief. "That is not food. That's just lazy. Welcome to human breakfast," Marcus replied with a wink. They both laughed, and for a moment, everything felt normal. No war, no wounds, no strange anatomy confusion, just two beings sitting across from each other. But not everyone was happy about their growing bond outside the med bay. Two figures watched from the corridor. One of them was Nurse Vella, and the other was Security Commander Jules. "She's been spending too much time with the human," Vella said, her voice sharp. "She's violating the time limit protocol and the medical bonding code." "Commander." Jules narrowed his eyes. "I will talk to her tomorrow," he said. "This is starting to look personal inside." Valerie had no idea she was being watched. She stood up slowly and began rechecking Marcus's bandages, but his eyes were watching her, not the scanner. "You know, Doc V," he said softly, "I've been in med bays before, but never like this." "Like what?" she asked, pretending to focus. "Like I don't want to leave," he said. Valerie paused. "That's because you're still recovering," she said quietly. Marcus smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe it's because the nurse here is different." Valerie didn't answer. Her fingers moved slower over the medical wrap, her thoughts louder than her words. Was this still medical care? Or was something else forming between them? She walked back to her desk, trying to reset her thoughts, but before she could even sit down, the door hissed open sharply. Commander Jules stepped inside, tall and stern. "Valerie," he said coldly. A moment outside, Marcus sat up slightly, concern on his face. Valerie glanced at him, then followed the commander out into the hall. The door shut behind her, sealing them away from Marcus. Commander Jules wasted no time. "You are developing an emotional attachment to the human," he said directly. Valerie stood still. "I am observing his recovery," she replied calmly. "Is that what you call watching human comedy shows with him after your shift?" he asked. Is that what you call feeding him food with your own hands? Valerie lowered her gaze. I'm learning more about his species, she said. Commander Zol's eyes narrowed. Be careful, Valerie. Humans are unpredictable. And soldiers like him have nothing to lose. She clenched her hands. He is kind, and he listens. And I choose to be near him. Joel took a step forward. Then choose carefully, because your position here is not untouchable. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Valerie stood frozen for a moment. Then walked back into the medbay. Marcus looked up. Everything all right? She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I've been warned, she said softly. Warned about what? About being too close to you. Marcus frowned. So what are you going to do? He asked. Valerie walked to his bedside and sat down again. I am going to finish what I started. She said firmly, You are still my patient. Marcus watched her quietly. There was something in her voice, a hint of fear, but also strength. He reached out and gently placed his hand over hers. You don't have to stay if it puts you in trouble. Valerie didn't move. I want to, she whispered. They sat like that for a long time, their hands resting together in silence. It was no longer just curiosity, no longer just medicine. Something deeper was blooming. Something forbidden. That night, Valerie returned to her small living quarters. She couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about Marcus, about his voice, his touch, his stories. And her heart ached in a way she had never felt before. Not because of illness, not because of duty, but because she didn't want to lose this strange connection. Not now, not ever. And she had a terrible feeling that someone might try to take it away from her. Marcus was sitting up again the next morning, stretching slowly. His muscles still sore, but stronger than before. The healing pod had done its job. And now only soft bandages covered the last few wounds on his back and chest. But his eyes weren't focused on the machines or the medroom around him. He was watching the door, waiting for Valerie. Every sound in the hallway made his heart beat faster. And when the door finally opened, and she stepped inside, he smiled like he had just seen. Sunlight, morning, Doc V, he said. His voice calm but warm. Valerie nodded. Placing a fresh nutrient tray on the table beside his bed. You are healing faster than expected, she said. Her tone professional, but softer than usual. That's because you're the one taking care of me, he replied, and her cheeks turned a deeper shade of green. But before she could respond, the medbay doors opened again. Another nurse entered. This one unfamiliar, tall, pale blue skin with sharp black eyes. I'm here to take over patient 113, the new nurse said. Velar blinked. No one informed me of a shift change, she said. Stepping closer, orders from above. The nurse replied. Without emotion, you are reassigned to hydroscan station duty. Marcus looked from one to the other, confused. Wait, what's going on? Valerie forced herself to stay calm. I will check with the supervisor. She said, please rest. Then she walked out quickly, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached the command office and asked for clarity. Commander Joel was there waiting as if he already knew she would come. You are being rotated. Valerie, he said coolly, to avoid further distractions. This is unfair, she said, her voice trembling. He trusts me. And I understand his body better than any other medic here. Exactly, Joel said. And that's the problem. Valerie stood, frozen, hands shaking. At her sides, it's only curiosity, she whispered. Joel raised an eyebrow. Is it? He asked, then looked back at his screen. You are dismissed. Meanwhile, back in Medbay 7. The new nurse tried checking Marcus's readings, but he pulled his arm away. Where's Valerie? He asked sharply. She's been assigned elsewhere, the nurse said flatly. No. Marcus said firmly. I want her, and only her. The nurse frowned. You don't get to choose, human? Marcus looked at her, eyes hard. Then I don't want treatment. I'll get up and leave if you don't bring her back. The nurse tapped her cum unit, reporting the problem within minutes. The medbay door opened again, this time with Commander Zool stepping inside. He walked over to Marcus, looking down at him with cold eyes. You're just a patient. Soldier, you don't give orders here. Marcus stared back. I almost died out there. I've been through hell, and the only reason I didn't give up was because of her. You're recovering fine now, Joel replied. Any nurse can finish the job, but she's not just any nurse. Marcus said, she understands me, she listens, she cares. Joel remained quiet, then turned to the side. The door opened again and Valari entered, unsure of why. She was called. Her eyes met Marcus's instantly, and something passed between them. Silent but strong, Yule looked at her. Your patient refuses care unless it is from you, he said, his voice full of warning. Valari stepped forward. Slowly, standing beside Marcus. Then I will stay, she said, her voice steady, until he is fully healed. Joel studied her face, then nodded once and left the room without another word. The new nurse followed, clearly annoyed, now alone again. Marcus let out a breath. I wasn't going to let them push you away, he said. Valerie looked at him, surprised. You risked your treatment for me. I risked a lot more in the past, he said. But you? You're worth it. She sat beside him, quietly reaching for the fresh bandage wrap. As she cleaned the side of his ribs, her fingers brushed against his skin gently. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just watched her with quiet eyes. You should not have fought for me, she whispered. But I wanted to, he answered. And I'd do it again. For a few minutes, there was only silence between them, not awkward, not tense, but full of something deep and unspoken, a trust, a connection. A warmth neither of them could name just yet. You are strange, she finally said with a soft smile. And you're the best mistake I've ever made, Marcus replied. She tilted her head. Mistake? The swelling incident, he grinned. Valari rolled her eyes. You still talk too much. But this time, she didn't walk away. She stayed beside him, hand resting gently on his arm, because now she knew this was no longer just about healing wounds. This was about healing hearts. And Marcus had already touched something inside her she never knew existed. Valari stood by the healing pod, staring at the screen with quiet eyes. The numbers showed that Marcus was now stable. His muscles fully repaired, his bones fused, and his blood levels perfect. It was everything a nurse should hope for. And yet, her chest felt heavy. Transfer orders just came in. Nurse Velo whispered beside her, placing a sealed tablet on the desk. Valari didn't answer. She already knew Marcus was being sent back to Earth's military base tomorrow. The med station had finished its job, but her heart wasn't ready that evening. Valari entered his room slower than usual. Marcus sat on the bed, half-dressed, holding the same Earth coin he had given her days ago. He was quiet too, which wasn't like him. No teasing, no jokes, no Doc V. In that smooth, playful tone, they're sending me back, he said simply. I know, she replied. Keeping her voice steady, he nodded, staring down at the coin. I thought maybe I'd feel ready, but I don't. Valari wanted to say something. Anything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she handed him a small packet of nutrients, wrapped in a soft cloth. For the journey, she said. Marcus took it gently, his fingers brushing hers. I never said thank you properly, he said. You did, she replied. No. He shook his head. Not for saving me, but for seeing me not just as a soldier, not just as a species, but as a person. She lowered her eyes. Others would have done the same? No, he said firmly. Only you did. There was a long silence between them. Then Marcus placed the Earth coin into her hand. Closing her fingers over it, "Keep it, as a promise," he said. "Promise of what?" she asked softly. "That this won't be the end." She nodded slowly, even though her chest ached. She turned to leave before her emotions showed, but before the door closed behind her, she whispered, "Goodbye, Marcus." The next morning, the docking bay was cold and quiet. A shuttle waited outside with its engines humming gently. Inside Medbay 7, Marcus's bed was empty. Valari stood at her post, hands behind her back. She had tried not to walk past his room, but her feet had betrayed her. She had hoped just a little that he would still be there, but the bed was made, the machines off. She told herself to return to her duties, to forget the human who made. Her heart raced, but her fingers gripped the coin in her pocket too tightly. Suddenly, an alert popped on the security screen nearby. Unauthorized movement near greenhouse wing. It flashed. Valari's eyes widened. The greenhouse. That was a restricted zone, used only for storing Earth-compatible plants. She rushed toward the greenhouse corridor, her boots echoing against the metal floor. When she entered, she froze. There he was, Marcus, sitting under a small alien tree that glowed faint blue. His bag rested beside him. Unopened, he looked up and grinned. "Hey, Doc V." Valari blinked, completely shocked. "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't leave," he said simply. "Not without seeing you again." "You already said goodbye." She whispered. "I changed my mind," he said. "I want to say something else." She stepped closer, the soft light of the glowing tree dancing across her face. Marcus stood now, a little unsteady, but tall. "I asked the commander for a delay," he said. "I told him I couldn't walk away from someone who made me feel alive." Valari looked at him, confused but hopeful. "Why?" she asked. "Because this isn't just curiosity anymore," he said. "It's not about biology, or medicine, or strange swelling." She laughed softly, shaking her head. Marcus smiled. "I think I fell for you, Doc V," he said. And I don't care how many rules we break." Valari stepped closer, her voice trembling. "There are many rules. Then we break all of them," he said. "Together." She stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. The warmth between them was real. Not confusion, not a mistake, just something honest. "We have little time," she said quietly. "Then let's make every moment count," he replied. They stood together under the glowing tree, the soft hum of the station fading into the background. In that moment, it didn't matter where he was from, or what species she belonged to. It only mattered that in a vast galaxy full of war, science, and fear, two hearts had found each other. And maybe, just maybe, this goodbye would turn into something else. Something that lasted. Alarms rang across the outer perimeter of the station. Valari heard them first, sharp, echoing beeps bouncing off the metal walls of Sector 6. She and Marcus stood frozen under the glowing alien tree, their hands still joined. "What's happening?" Marcus asked. "Alert now." Valari touched the small device on her wrist. "Unidentified ships approaching. Security lockdown has started." She replied. The moment between them was gone. The silence was replaced by urgency. But even now, her hand did not let go of his. "Will they let you stay?" Marcus asked as they moved quickly down the hall. Valari shook her head. "Non-station personnel must move to transport pods immediately." "You mean they're going to kick me off again?" Marcus said, almost laughing. "You won't have a choice," she said softly. They reached the central medical floor, which was now lit by flashing red lights. Nurses ran across hallways, preparing evacuation plans. Valari was quickly approached by Commander Jules, who looked more serious than ever. "You," Suel barked at Marcus. "Shuttle 2 is waiting for you. Get inside." Marcus didn't argue. But he looked at Valari one last time. She didn't speak either, but in that look, everything was. Said he was taken away fast, surrounded by 2 security drones. Valari turned back toward the medical bay, but her chest felt empty again. She went back to work patching minor injuries, distributing emergency meds, focusing on tasks. But her mind refused to stay quiet. Half an hour later, a message arrived. Emergency enemy boarding detected at hangar entry 3. Her heart dropped. That was the shuttle bay where Marcus had been sent. Without asking for permission, she grabbed a medpack and ran. Her badge gave her access to restricted sectors, and she used it without thinking. When she reached hangar entry 3, smoke filled the air. Sparks flew from damaged walls, and alien guards lay wounded, and there, near the wall, was Marcus bleeding, but standing, a weapon in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other. 2 enemy drones lay crushed behind him. "You always show up when I'm at my worst," he joked through the pain. Valari ran to him. Placing a hand on his chest, "You are hurt," she said. Her voice shaking only a little. He said, then winced. She quickly opened her med pack. Kneeling down beside him, "This may sting," she said. "Not more than losing you," he whispered. Her hands paused, her eyes slowly rising to meet his. "You almost did," she said, voice soft, but not this time. He leaned against the wall as she wrapped his shoulder. "I don't want to leave anymore," Marcus said suddenly. "I know it's complicated, and I know our species are different. But I've seen enough war, enough pain," he continued. "And when I'm around you, Doc V, I feel like I still have something worth living for." Valerie pressed the final seal on the bandage. She didn't answer right away. Then she spoke. "You once said, I saved your life." Marcus nodded. "You did." She smiled gently. "But you saved mine too." Before he could speak, her fingers gently touched his cheek. Her hand lingered, soft but firm. Then, without overthinking, she leaned in, and their foreheads touched her cool skin against his warm one. It was not a kiss, not in the human sense, but in her culture, this was more intimate. It meant trust. It meant connection. It meant something sacred. Marcus closed his eyes, understanding it without needing words. "Does this mean I'm finally discharged?" he asked, chuckling softly. "You are no longer a patient," she said. "Then what am I?" She paused for a long moment. "Mine," she whispered. Hours later, the attack was pushed back. The station secure again, Commander Joel found them. Together, sitting in the greenhouse once more. He didn't say a word at first. Just observed. Then he spoke. "You stayed even when you were told to go." Marcus nodded. "I stayed because leaving would have been the real wound." Joel sighed, then handed them a new Document-10 approval request for cross-species civil partnership exploration. Valerie looked at it. Stunned, Marcus blinked. "Wait, is this real?" Sewell grunted. "It's paperwork and trouble, but perhaps love is also a form of medicine." He walked away, shaking his head. Valerie looked at Marcus. He was grinning again. "You hear that, Doc 5?" He said the word love. Valerie tilted her head. "It's not in any of our medical books." "Well," Marcus said, placing the coin in her hand again. "Maybe we'll write a new one together." And with that, 2 hearts, 1 human. 1 alien began a journey, not written in biology, but in bravery, laughter, and something stronger. Then medicine, something called love.